We're live, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Balance and Empathy Show. Hi, everyone. We're live here with me from the Netherlands with Ashok from Canada. Ashok is the founder of the Empathy Clinic. And today we have a special guest with us, Ruta Stasiunaite. She is a transformational coach. Today we have an amazing topic that we talk about, which is finding your path to success. And this is really interesting and really close to my heart. Before we go into the topic, if you're watching, please put in the comments where are you watching from, because we always want to know where are you based and who are we reaching in our beautiful world. So, Ruta, maybe you can introduce yourself shortly and tell us a little bit about what you do as a transformational coach. And then after that, we can dive into the topic.
Hello, thanks Titia for introduction. Hi Ashok, hi everyone watching. So yeah, it's an honor. First of all, it's an honor to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak to you, have this amazing conversation. What do I do? So I have started working as a coach over 2.5 years ago, when I was going through a lot of turbulence in my life personally, and I had kind of hit a rock bottom myself when I realized that I was kind of living someone else's life. And this is in particular why the topic finding your path to success is so aligned, because I felt like I was doing something that was not purposeful, it was not aligned with my soul, it was not feeling good, it was not just going in the direction that I hoped to go in. And so that's when I started questioning and asking myself, so what is it that I actually want to do, and how do I want to contribute to a better world, and why are people struggling in life? Why I feel like I'm not the only one, and there are a lot of people who are also in the same positions where they hit, let's say, 28, 30 plus age, and then they start questioning, oh, okay, I have ticked all the boxes, and yet still I don't feel accomplished, yet still something is missing, and yet still I need to continue searching. So that's when I started really diving into the coaching world and personal development world, and realizing what a vast world there is to really unlock, to understand not only about ourselves, who we are, but also about reality. How do we perceive reality? How do we relate to other people? How do we relate to situations? And then fast forward to today, I'm working with individuals, helping them do the same and realize themselves.
That's beautiful. And I think this, from what you told me, this touches a lot of people. I remember being invited on several podcasts. A very famous podcast question is, what advice would you give your younger self, right? And I always say to my younger self, I would say, follow your path and don't allow anyone to, get you off your own path. And that often happens, often. And that's what you talked about. You're not living your own life, you're living someone else's life. And and I think that's for many people. They live someone else's life. And so how do you start? I think the first thing is that you have to be, how to say, awakened, realizing you're not living your own life. And then once you realize that, what's your advice? What do you do then? What's your next step?
That's a great question. I would say the first is to acknowledge that something is not quite feeling right. And when you feel like you're living a lie, then okay, so how can I investigate that? What does it mean? So for me, the biggest question is, okay, so how can I start critically thinking? Because in my own personal journey and with many people's journeys, it seems like there's a lot of autopilot where we are so used to making certain decisions on an autopilot, and we just kind of with blinders, we just go with that same path, something that has been kind of ingrained so deeply simply because of the environment we grew up in, maybe with the family. There are expectations from friends, from society, from even ourselves, where we project our own expectations based on just wanting to be loved, wanting to be accepted, wanting to be, I guess, fitting in. And so the first step, I would say, starting to critically think and to question everything, really questioning beliefs, questioning thoughts, questioning the way we see things, understand things, relate to things, relate to other people. So yeah, I would say it's like a huge question mark, and then becoming kind of curious and obsessively curious almost.
If I can just jump in on the issue here. When we're born, we can't choose who we're born to, where we're born, what languages we speak, how we're educated, then we begin to choose our friends. That's probably the first time we actually begin to choose. And as we get older, we begin to realize we have choice. And I think you said something that's so useful for people to understand, is that we can get routinized. We can really get tracked in by the expectations of others, the needs of others, especially in the teenage years, where you want to identify so much with your peers. And that's okay, that's normal. But at some point, you have to exercise the choice to be yourself. And some people don't know who themselves is.
Yeah.
They don't start that journey until they're so far away from who they are. They actually go off screen on their own soul. And they need to come back to that, come back to that place. And that's why I think the work that you're doing is so vital.
Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think it's a good point what you say, Ruta. You have to question and you have to become curious, because I think for a lot of people it is, once you realize you're living someone else's life and you have to find out who you are, a lot of people don't know who they are and they don't know what they want. So here I am, knowing I have to go in my own direction, but where do I go? Do I go there? Do I go there? How do I decide, right? I think that's such an important process. Do you have any tips on how do you choose? You question,
Absolutely.
obviously, but how do you really get to the root of knowing, feeling, what direction do you have to go?
Right. So taking Ashok's example of getting out of off screen, how to return back to the screen. And I think a lot of people know the word alignment and yet don't really understand what that truly means. So for me, coming back to the center means kind of searching for what feels good, what feels right, instead of staying in the head too much of what I should do or what I think I'm supposed to do or what I think that will bring success or bring peace or bring happiness. What feels good in that present moment, even if it's a little bit scary. And I think this is what a lot of people are struggling with, this fear of like, oh, but I've never done this. I don't know how to do that. And yet, if it feels good, if it feels right, then perhaps that's a great idea to try. So that's the alignment where you are coming back to, okay, maybe I'm not fearless, but at least if I have this excitement and curiosity to try and to go in that direction, and also at the same time to be very radically honest with myself and with others, that you know what, I don't care what other people will think. What I do care is how I will feel, and that's my advice in that case.
Beautiful.
I think that's a great way to put it. And just to add to that, I think it feels good to be loved and it feels good to be respected. But if you don't love and respect yourself, then you're giving away that feeling to other people to decide that feeling for you. So a lot of people that I know, and even I would accuse myself of this, have lived parts of my life where other people's expectations, my need to be loved by them, my need to be respected by them, overshadowed those feelings in myself. And because what we're talking about, I think in a way, is awareness. Discovering the awareness of self can you talk to that question? Like, how do we discover awareness of self?
Great question. You always have great questions. That's brilliant. How do we discover awareness? So that's, I think it comes back to the questioning bit. And for me, it works in distancing yourself from the situations where we're so ingrained and we're so living in the performance of life. We are literally standing on the stage and we are the actors of life, While with awareness, we can also pull ourselves back from the situation and look at everything a little bit from a side, as if like some kind of like a bowl, and looking, okay, so what's actually happening? How can I investigate what's happening a little bit from a distance? And from that distance, then we are becoming aware of what we're aware of. Otherwise, we're just consumed by it, and we're literally inside of the performance, inside of the game. So it doesn't mean that it's not okay to play as actors in that performance on the stage, but we can have these different roles where we distance ourselves and we can look from a side and we can zoom in and zoom out in a sense. I don't know if that makes sense, like for people listening, but yeah.
Well, I became aware of myself when I was 23 in June of 1983. And
That's specific that you remember that, right?
No. I'll tell you why. So I was completely lost. I was heartbroken. I had no idea who I was. I was separating. I was in medical school at the time. I'd completely lost my compass. And my beautiful dad said, "Why don't you go to India?" And I was living in Newfoundland at the time. And I said, what? Okay, great, let's do that. But the value of that, and this is what I think Ruta was saying, I had to get completely out of my life and look at my life from a completely different perspective to come back to my life and then say, oh, and I didn't realize my life until I got far away from it to look at it from a perspective that wasn't in it. I was outside of it. And when I came back to my life, I was much clearer on what I needed to do to reevaluate. It's hard to evaluate something when you're in it.
Yeah,
it's hard to evaluate it when you're outside of it. And I think I hope that speaks to Ruta's point that she made. I think that's such perspective, I think is the word we're saying.
Right. And I think it's a great example. It can be physically removing yourself from the situation for a while, for a vacation, for a little trip, staying somewhere else, going to visit a friend. But it can also be a mental distance, a mental shift where you might go to work with a coach. You might go start reading books. You might mentally somehow distance yourself because you're doing something different than you would normally do. Coming back to what we spoke earlier, you're no longer on an autopilot doing things just because you've always been doing. And then you're like, okay, so what can I shift? And I think there's this also example of some people say, if you always take the same route to your work, for example, then how can you take a different street? How can you take a different, turn somewhere? And then already you will have different stimuli and different inspiration, like maybe science, maybe you will realize or experience something that's kind of out of ordinary. And that's also the key.
Yeah, I think I really recognize this, especially when you talked about taking a vacation, because whenever I'm on a vacation, and I think many people do, I always start to think about, because then you have time, you're in another place, usually in another country, if you're lucky with COVID, right, and you can travel. And then you have these moments and times to think, really sit and think and have a still moment. What is your life now? Am I going in a direction I want, right? And usually people get all these great ideas when they're away from the situation. So that really helps. But then you come back to the situation. And I think there's a little bit danger there. Once you are aware that you're living someone else's life, you want in another direction, you take yourself out of the situation. At some point, you're going to come back into that system that you came out of, and what can you do to protect yourself really from not falling in that same trap again, those same expectations that people have of you, maybe family, maybe work, maybe friends, whoever it is, right? If you really want to make that change and transform.
So one thing that's very, very important, I believe not enough people think about what they actually want. So when you are there on vacation, thinking about, so where is my life actually heading? A lot of people don't know. If you ask them, okay, so what do you actually want? If you really would have to go specific with it, where do you want to live, what kind of relationship you want to be in, what kind of job or occupation or business you want to run, who you want to be, how do you want to feel, what kind of thoughts you want to think, what kind of beliefs you want to have. People don't question that. So crystallizing, really identifying clearly what it is that you really want and making that vision as clear as possible is one of the steps to actually go back into your old environment and having this kind of almost falling in love with this idea, falling in love with this, like, oh my God, I want that life to be my reality. I want to feel that way. I want that relationship. I want that career. And with that feeling of being in love, then you will already be more inspired to do something with it. And so practically, I would also say setting aside some time to make that actually happen. Because yes, it can be challenging when we're back in our old environments and then we're busy with life. But the thing is, we need to create space for it. We need to create time for it. And we need to be disciplined enough to be consistent, to kind of dedicate at least, let's say, 30 minutes every day to begin with for that, either taking specific action or to crystallize the vision even more, or to start talking to different people, do something with it.
Just want to add to what Ruta is saying. I think this is so important as well, is that what I notice in my practice, if I'm seeing somebody, it could be a woman in a bad relationship, or it could be someone in a toxic work environment, or so the question is, once someone begins to be aware of that, and they go back into that same environment, they're even more upset that they're in the environment. They're even more disappointed. And I call myself an empowerment person. So I try to give people the power that they have. And what happens with people, I think, is that once they become more empowered, and we go right back to choice again, they have the choice. They may still have to tolerate a difficult situation, but they know that they're planning or their way to manage that more effectively. That gives them hope. But once they have hope that, yes, I might need to put up with this for another X number of time, that changes their sensibility. So then they're going from anxiety and depression to hopefulness and empowerment. And then hopefully they can find a way either out of it, or they can change that situation inside of it. And that's many of my clients don't believe that they can change how their boss treats them or how their spouse treats them. And they can, if they rise up and use that power, that newfound power that they've discovered.
And this beautifully comes back to what you said earlier, that we have to find power and peace and alignment within ourselves instead of expecting other people or situations or life to drop it on our lap. Because I think a lot of people think that, oh, well, I'm just not lucky, or it just doesn't happen to me, or I'm just doomed to live this way. Well, that's not true. We are the creators of our circumstances, and we need to step into that power within to first and foremost feel confident and loving ourselves, like you also said earlier, loving ourselves, accepting ourselves, being compassionate to ourselves and to other people, because only then we can really feel this, like, I can do this, I can actually take action, I can actually change my life. Otherwise, we will be grabbing onto something externally, but no one can make us happy and no one will take action for us. We are the only ones responsible.
That's so true. And I always think, if I relate it to myself, I don't want to be like, 70, look back and then regret the things I didn't do. I would not want that, So that's why I always try and push myself to go ahead and keep trying, right? To achieve what I want. We have a question coming in from the audience, from Juanita de Jager. It sounds like a Dutch name. Hi, Juanita. Thank you for watching. She says, hi, y'all. How do you deal with a toxic person that thinks they know better and tell you to get out of their office?
Good question. I would actually, that reminds me of, I used to work as a project manager back in the days. And before I started my coaching career, and there was one person who was an extremely toxic person who, in fact, within the first 30 days of me working in that company, shouted at me in an open office in the morning. And I was like, oh my God, this is so crazy. And at the time, it beautifully ties into, again, I did not respect myself. And so I allowed that to happen. I allowed this person to just treat me that way openly. And so I didn't have that connection with myself at the time. I didn't have the power. I wasn't connected to who I really was yet. And so if now I would put myself in that situation years later, so it's been maybe 5 years now.
Yeah.
I am so much more aligned, and I know who I am, and I know what I stand for, and I know how I treat myself. And so therefore, I would not allow that person to treat me that way, simply because I don't treat that way myself, right? So to answer the question, then I would say that the first and foremost advice that I would give is really work on your own self-love and self-confidence and empowerment, and know who you are first and foremost. And so whenever something like this will happen, it's automatically going to be like, who do you think you are speaking to me like this? It's not okay. And let me tell you how you could and should talk to other people overall. And another thought that comes up for me is that people, when they are treating other people badly, they are the ones who are traumatized, and they're the ones hurting the most. Because people who do not have conflict within themselves do not cause conflicts externally. So those are the two things that I would definitely say are very, very important to understand.
Ruth, I'm so glad you said that, because I was going to say, and I don't need to say it at all, but I'm going to just remind the audience that the people who bully other people and are toxic are usually suffering from tremendous insecurity on the inside. And they derive security by putting other people down and making other people feel insecure. And if that person receives that insecurity and identifies with it and becomes insecure because they don't know themselves, they're not respecting themselves, they don't love themselves, they don't have self-compassion, then it works. But if that person has self-compassion, respect, and love, then they can push that insecurity back to that person that's making them feel insecure. They don't have to say too much about it in a work environment, but they can know inside the core of themselves that they are not diminished by that person's outburst towards them.
Yeah, and I think that's, if you're talking about the topic we're talking about today, finding your path to success, this can be a critical factor, right? Your environment, at work or at home or at school, if there's someone there being toxic to you, suppressing you, and you allow it, you're not on your own path to success. And that's not what you want. So as difficult as it is, you have to stand up for yourself, or find another job and then stand up to yourself, right? But at some point, take action and decide that this is not the way you want to be treated, and don't allow it anymore, whatever happens. And I'm sure once you do that, beautiful things will come your way. I'm sure of that.
And you just said one very, very important word, Titia: decision.
Yes.
People get stuck in indecision, where they're like, oh, I'm kind of okay with my life. It's not that bad. Basically, it's like, I can still handle that. But the thing is that as soon as we start really making decisions, taking decisions, moving forward, that's when things start changing. That's when we are really committed to that journey. Because being committed to the journey means making decisions, and sometimes those decisions aren't the easiest decisions. But indecision is what just perpetuates and keeps on staying in that old loop.
Yeah.
Same old story.
Exactly. And people put you in a box, right? They think they know who you are, and they're putting you in a box that they know. Once you decide, I'm not in that box, I'm in another direction, I'm creating a new box for myself, that confuses people. And people are then, they're confused, and they might react, they might resent you for not being the person they depended on so much before. So you can really face resistance from your family, from your co-workers, once you decide to change. And I think it's really important that people also realize that opinions are cheap, right? People give you their opinions all the time. They cost nothing, and they criticize you or judge you. So I always say opinions are cheap, but really find the people that support you. Find people around you that support you and really stand by your decisions. And as you said earlier, Ruta, don't allow what other people think of you influence your decision if you know it's right for you. But it can be difficult.
So this is the Empathy and Balance show. So we can't have the show without the word empathy being used. And when somebody assumes to know somebody else, they're not demonstrating empathy. The minute you think you know somebody else without actually inquiring or asking or bothering to find out who that person is, you're not empathizing with that person.
Yeah.
And this goes in every situation, whether it's in our relationships or in the workplace. So obviously, I'm always going to talk about empathy. But I think if someone is yelling at somebody else in the workplace, not only are they not empathizing with the person they're yelling at, they're not empathizing with themselves. Because later on, when they're talking to their therapist or me, and I'm saying, well, how do you think that person felt? How do you feel? They may feel feelings that they hadn't processed in the time. And I want to make a point about making a decision. and Titia kind of implied this as in one of her moments before. When I make a decision, I try to make a decision that looks at my entire life. We think when we make a decision that we just need to get out of this situation, or this is for this moment. But I think every decision we make in some way affects our whole life. And I use the spider web analogy. You can't cut one of those little threads in the spider web without changing the shape of the whole web. And that's why little decisions and big decisions really do change the shape of our life.
That's true. One step at a time. We actually have another comment from the audience. And just to say to the audience, if you're watching and you have a question about finding your path to success, the topic we talk about today, please put your question in the comments and we do our best to answer your question as best as we can. So Brian Moses is asking, thank you for watching, Brian. How would you deal with a boss who burdens you with other fields of work outside your professional assignments? He says he has a boss who is pushing him to do work of business, development management, adding to his procurement job. Well, I think setting boundaries is really important in this question. If it's not in your assignments, have the conversation and talk about it, and also set priorities, right? But if you're not equipped to do something and you have to do it, have the conversation with your boss, because I think no boss would be happy you doing a job you're not equipped to do. Or if you are equipped to do it, you have this amount of time. Set priorities. You want me to do this or you want me to do that. I have so much time. Make a decision.
I think what you're just saying, also what's so important, communication, and that applies to all questions and all misunderstandings and conflicts internally and externally, because we don't talk enough, we don't communicate enough, we don't ask enough questions to also understand other people and other people's expectations. We don't manage expectations. And so communication is so important in so many aspects of life when it comes to finding your path to success, because we need to communicate even with ourselves. Okay, so do I want procurement tasks only, or is it actually quite interesting to do something a little bit outside of my scope? Not because it's just giving to me, but simply because I like learning something new. So yeah, I would say communication is so important.
And I also think that when someone is asked to do a task, sometimes it's important to remember what the original request was. And I often ask my clients when they start a job to bring in their job description so I can read it with them. And then sometimes 3 months later or 6 months later, their job description has gone from this to this. And suddenly they're doing things that they weren't hired to do. Now, it's always good to grow, right? So it's good to be on that outside edge of growth, absolutely. But if a young person is a lawyer in a law firm, next thing you know, they're getting all the coffee and donuts all the time, and that's become their job.
Yeah.
That's going to take them away from dealing with those cases that will begin to amplify them in their career as a lawyer, for example. And I think it's kind of like, stay true to your authentic alignment, to stay true to what do you want to do, and how will that find, and a word I hope we're going to talk about soon, redefine the direction that you intend to go in.
Absolutely. And I think authentic self is very important, as Jacques, and I'm sure, Ruta, you can talk about that for days, because I think you have to be your authentic self, right? If you want to find your path to success, because what's the point in putting on a mask, not being true to yourself, and then going through life? You're always in a struggle and in a conflict with your true self. And if you really want to find your path and really want to find your success, you have to be nothing other than your authentic self.
Right. And that's why redefining success is so important, because I cannot tell you how many people I have worked with and I have come across, had conversations with, who have ticked all the boxes. It seems like, oh, well, I have achieved everything. I have a family, I have kids, I have a house, I have an amazing business or career, and I have all these things, but then having is not enough. It really is about who you are being first and foremost. Are you being true to yourself, to your authentic self? And are you comfortable with expressing that? Because it's one thing to understand that, okay, this is kind of feeling good and feeling authentic to me, but are you openly expressing that, no matter what people might think? Even your own family might be like, oh, you never did this, you were never saying these things, and like, what's going on? So it's really about redefining success, that it's not about shiny objects. It's not about something externally. Again, it's not external objects to chase. It, in fact, is reconnecting with who you really are, reconnecting with that soul, with that spirit, with that essence that you already are, and kind of even remembering what were the things that were making you happy when you were a child. As children, coming back to what Ashok was telling earlier, that as children, we were actually free to express ourselves. We didn't think about what other people will think until a certain age, when we start being conditioned and being like, oh, then I feel judged, and then I don't get my candy, and then somebody's going to punish me, and the teacher is going to say something, and then some bully is going to laugh at me at school. All these things start happening. But before it happens, we as kids actually allow ourselves to do everything. So how can you kind of reconnect with that childlike playfulness that we already are in our essence?
That's beautifully said. And I think what's very important in what you said is also fear, the fear factor. I think with many people, this kicks in, and this withholds them to being their authentic self and to following their own path, because of fear. What will people think of me? What will my family say? Cultural expectations. What will happen if I change careers? This fear kicks in, and that will keep people in place. And what are some steps that people can do to break through that fear? How do you put fear aside? How do you do that?
First and foremost is also returning back to the present moment. And actually, maybe that's a good moment. All we have is now.
Yes, absolutely.
It's really about reconnecting with the present moment, because fear does not exist in the now. Fear does not exist in the present moment. Fear does not exist in the place where we are aligned. Like when we are fully aligned and we are just enjoying and in awe of what world is offering to us in any given moment, that's where fear doesn't have place. Actually, it doesn't exist in that place. Only when we are not in the present moment, meaning you maybe go for a walk and you're completely in your head. You don't even notice what's around you. You don't even notice the street. You don't even notice the trees around you, the cars passing by, the people. You don't even see that somebody's smiling at you on the street. It's because you're in your head. And when we're in our heads in different environments, that's when we are much more prone to experience these either fear or doubt or insecurity or anything that's holding us back. So the key is really returning back, either through meditation, through spending time in nature, through journaling, or just mindfulness practices of noticing the little things, even washing dishes with actually paying attention that you're actually washing dishes.
Yeah. Now I really recognize that. Like for me, and that takes back to the childhood fun. I really love animals, and I always have ever since I was a child. And I do have a lot of pets, and they bring me joy. If I sit on the couch with a cup of tea and my little sausage dog comes lying next to me, cuddling me, that makes me happy, right? And I can be happy with that in a one-bedroom apartment or in a villa. It really doesn't matter. It's about that moment, right? And it's not the shiny object. It's that little creature loving me and me loving her back, right? And that's basically like, yes. Those are the little things that matter so much in life. Would you agree, Ashok?
Yeah, well, I'm a musician, so I spend a lot of time in my musical mind, so I can get out of my contemplative mind. And for me, music is spontaneous. And it's because you're listening, and if you're playing as well as listening at the same time, you're actually forcing yourself to be in that present moment very deliberately, but also by relaxing your mind. So you're not spending too much focus. You're actually relaxing your mind and allowing things to happen in your mind. And for me, music does that. I find music generally soothing, not always, but generally soothing, even if it's very exciting music, or if I'm watching Ruta, one of her scenes with Tears for Fears, of course, I'll be crying. That's my problem. But I find that music is my contemplative place, and I spend a lot of time on a daily. I have a guitar right here, right now, so there's always a guitar near me. And it's just, I think I think what we're saying is practice those things that find comfort in your mind. If you have a knotted muscle, you go get it massaged out, but you need to massage your mind too. So you
Yeah.
get those knots out so your mind can relax, you can sleep properly, and you can also be relaxed to other people. Because how you are to other people, that energy, you can infect a toxicity, but you can also infect peace and calmness to other people as well.
And I think music can be a beautiful tool for that. You can put on soothing, relaxing music. Or, and that's what I do when I have to clean my house. I put on this energy music, and then I'm, half an hour and I'm done, right? So that's really, you have all these tools you can set in to help your mind, really. Whatever works for you.
Yeah. Enjoy what you do and do what you enjoy doing.
Absolutely. Beautifully said. We have a question coming from Henry. Henry Go Cool. I think that's not his last name. So Henry is asking, what is the difference between a boss and a leader with regards to this topic? Well, I would say like a boss would pull rank, right? And I think a leader would make sure that you rise to your highest possible potential. What would you think?
I totally agree with this. I would say that a leader is selfless. So they really are not interested in their egoic needs, hierarchy, power games, none of that. While a boss, I would say that there's somewhat too much ego involved. And what's really important to raise here is that ego is not an enemy. It's not a bad thing per se. It's just a part of us that we need to really befriend and get to know better. But it's not wrong per se. It's just imbalance of ego and imbalance of when somebody as a boss is then kind of projecting their own insecurities, what we spoke earlier, when somebody is forcing their power and onto other people, that's simply because they have insecurity and doubt within themselves. And so as a leader, they don't need any validation externally. They already know who they are, and they really want other people to thrive.
Yeah, totally agree. What do you think, Ashok?
Yeah, thank you for asking. I think that the difference for me is empathy. A boss doesn't describe someone who has empathy for the people that they're bossing, but
Yeah.
a leader has empathy for the people that they're leading, inspires the people that they're leading, and looks for leadership in those people that they're leading, so that those people in their team can also rise up to become leaders themselves.
Yeah. Beautifully put. Beautifully put. One question coming in from Girish Pendegree. A hypothetical situation, he says. A case where a colleague with no hierarchy asks for help within a task. And this help actually turns to be doing the complete assignment on behalf of them. How to be empathetic with such colleagues and how to motivate them to ask for help in a correct way at the first place. Well, I would say it also starts with you. Helping someone, it's not a problem, but it's not right if their tasks become your daily tasks, right? If someone is sick or they need help or there's some kind of crisis, sure, you can help your colleague, but in the end, everyone needs to do their own work, and if that's not working, then you have a different conversation. So what's going on? What makes it that you cannot perform your daily task, and how can we help you change this? And I think that's the conversation you need to have then.
I'm curious to hear from Ashok, because empathy is your topic. So I'm really curious to hear Ashok's point of view on this.
Well, when I was a child, we had recess at school. And during recess, you would typically buy a bag of chips. And when you bought a bag of chips, usually 6 people would immediately run around you and circle you and suddenly become your friends.
Oh, yeah.
You would circle it around, and you were lucky if there are chips left in the bag for you. So I think, to me, if you're sharing with people, there's chips in the bag for you. If you're giving it away, then there's no chips left for you. And I think when we help someone, if we do it for them, we're actually not helping them. We're enabling them. And I always say that if someone needs a wheelchair and they can walk, and you push them in that wheelchair long enough, they will actually forget how to walk because their muscles will atrophy. So there's a difference between helping somebody and helping someone to the point where you're enabling their own disability. And just that's a powerful way of putting it, perhaps. But I think kindness doesn't mean doing things for people. It also includes the idea of helping someone find a way to do something for themselves.
Yeah.
That's powerful. I love this. It's so true. So often we expect other people to do things for us, while it just really doesn't benefit. You don't really learn anything from it. So for the person who was asking the question, I would add to all of that they just need to step into leadership shoes as well. If you're being asked for advice, or you're being asked for, to explain something or to help with certain tasks, then you can step into your leadership shoes and mentor the person and teach the person and actually kind of do something outside of your scope of work, where you're like, oh, maybe normally I don't get the chance to lead other people and to teach other people, and now I can use this opportunity to do something that I normally don't.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. We have some nice comments coming in from Juanita de Jager. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much, Juanita.
Thank you, Juanita.
And from Ahmed El Ahmamsi, hi, amazing people. Well, hi,
Thank you,
Ahmed,
Ahmed.
to you.
Hi.
You're quite amazing as well. So that's so nice, people giving those comments. Yeah, so I think we had a great talk today about finding your path to success. And we talked about some steps, Ruta, in finding your path and the things people can do, right? So we talked about first becoming aware. That's very important, this awareness that you're living someone else's life, or you're not living your life at least. Then asking questions and really become curious, and then finding who you are and who you want to be. Take some distance, take yourself out of the situation, and then having a vision, and then taking time to realize that vision. What other steps do you recommend people to do to really hang on, hang in there, and complete it, right? And following that path and keep following it.
So the first thing is something that I mentioned earlier is perhaps just taking time every single day and really dedicating that time to that vision, which means any action is action. Just at least if you baby steps, again, what we spoke earlier, if you just take one baby step per day, that already makes a difference. So which basically means never stop moving, never stop learning, never stop growing, never stop learning, never stop being curious and wanting to become a better version of yourself, to create something. So at the end, it's just really taking action and never stopping.
Beautifully said. Ashok, do you have anything to add to this?
Always.
Go ahead.
Ruta, thank you so much, by the way. You're doing you're giving us so many great ideas and great points.
Absolutely.
The audience is lighting up with what you're saying. So thank you for being such a great guest today. I always think about contentment all the time. No, I'm old and I used to be very grumpy, and I'm less grumpy now because I'm more content. And I think that we should use discontentment to help us perfect those parts of ourselves that we want to get better at, but keep that in a zone of general contentment with who they are once we find our alignment and we find who we are. Because if we use discontentment outside of contentment and we're mostly discontent, you're just grumpy and crusty. So I like the idea of being good at something and then how to get better at it and how to get the best at it. And I know I'm never going to be the best at everything I try, whether it's guitar or even empathy. You never get great at empathy. You're just always practicing it. But you have to be content with that process of I'm getting better as opposed to I'm not getting better. And I think that's the difference for me, is learning how to and this is a soul-based issue for me, learning how to be content with your life, your whole life. And as long as you're working on that, not only are you going to have a good energy in yourself, but you're going to give that energy to other people.
So important. Gratitude, being grateful for where we are with what we have created, and yet still looking ahead, not looking backwards and not getting stuck and stagnated where we are, but just being content with what we have achieved already. So important.
Yeah, wonderfully said. And I would also say, keep remembering. You talked about having a vision, taking some distance and creating that vision. And once you get back in that system, it can so be easily that you go on autopilot again, back to your life. And if you don't want that, you have to remind yourself every day. And I know Simon Sinek talks a lot about this, your why, your vision. So every day, at least a couple of times a day, but at least one time a day, remember, right? Why are you doing this? If you're going in another direction, if you want to follow your path, remember, why are you doing this? Put up a picture, put up some, like you have in the back, all we have is now. Put up something that reminds you, why do you want this and why do you want to follow your path? I think that's crucial to keep yourself going. So do you have any last comments to share with our audience before we close off this beautiful conversation?
The one thing that I really want to thank you both for an amazing conversation, Titi and Ashok. It's really such a pleasure to have a conversation where it just flows and we support each other's ideas. And it's like a nice puzzle that we're bringing together, with all these insights that we have and experiences. And so it's really an honor to be here. And for all the audience listening, I just want you to all believe in yourselves, because the thing is that for some reason, there's so much insecurity projected onto us, as if we are supposed to be in this perfect body and have this fat wallet and, you know, live in this castle like home or something. But at the end of the day, we need to accept that all of that is not real. Like, what is real is here. What is real is in the heart. And just forget about what all these influences externally and all this media and what's going on in the world. What really matters is that you connect with yourself, you love yourself and the world as it is, you accept it for what it is, and you just enjoy the journey. This is the key. There's no destination. We all know this phrase. It's not about the destination, it's about the journey.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ruta. Ashok,
Thank
over to you.
Yeah, I just want to say this, and this is what I've learned in this conversation today, and it's amplified this so much. If we ask the question, who am I? And we continue to ask that question, who am I in the presence of my relationships? Who am I at work? Who am I when I'm with myself? We don't all have to be perfectly aligned, but they have to be aligned enough that you feel that your soul is integrating rather than splitting apart. And we all need our persona. I need to act certain ways, whether you're a doctor in an office with your patients, or a lawyer, or a coach, or whatever you're doing. That's important, that we have to have a way that we are with each other. If who I am is still a satisfactory answer, so we feel that contentment, that compassion, that respect, and that love for ourselves, then we're probably on the right way to finding our success.
Beautifully said, Ashok. Thank you so much.
Right.
To all the people out there watching, it's as Ruta said, you know, you are worthy no matter what other people say. Doesn't matter. Don't listen to the naysayers. You are worthy and you are very capable of achieving what you want to achieve. Thank you so much, Ruta, for being with us today, for the beautiful conversation. Thank you, Ashok. I had a lot of fun today and I learned a lot, so thank you for that. We will be back with you in another 2 weeks with a new episode of the Balance and Empathy Show. Thank you all for watching and see you then. Bye-bye.
Bye.